Hello? Hello, and welcome to the 2018 Mother of the Nation Festival. My name is Esraa Bani, and I welcome you to this majlis, and I welcome you to this interactive conversation on positive family cultures and the creation of family traditions. I want to start off by knowing who's here in the audience, so please raise your hand if you're a parent. That's more than half of you here. That's great. And the other half, I'm pretty sure you're either a son or daughter, so you are a product of a parent. So everyone here today will know a little something about what we're talking about, which is family. Today we're discussing families. And the concept of family differs for each person. The definition of family differs for each person. But one thing that I could share with you is that back in the day, we used to have families in groups of 20 to 30 people, extended family groups. And we used to have more children, possibly due to the fact that there was a higher infant and child mortality rates. And we basically had very, very big families. And nowadays, the new family, we call those generation one of families. Nowadays, we have families that are much smaller, finite families, less children. And if you walk down the Corniche today and you find one or two parents walking with one or two children, it doesn't strike you as something that's odd. You wouldn't be thinking, did they leave the rest of their family home? It's totally normal. And it's due to lots of different things. It can be, the discovery of family planning methods. It could be due to many different things, the economic, situations, etc., and the way how families are structured nowadays. So I'm trying to set the scene. I know the topic today is family traditions, but I'm setting the scene. We really need to look into what does the modern family look like. So, to me, the definition of family is, I looked at all of these different definitions, and I'm pretty sure there are lots of people who define family by lineage, by people who share your genetics. But to me, family is people who give you unconditional love, people who support you. Sometimes they're not part of your lineage, and sometimes they don't share your genetic coding. It's your family. This is my family. And if you guys know me, you would know it's missing a member. Sharif is not in this picture, but we're a family of 5. This picture was a little old. It was from 2014. It's one of my most favorite family photos because it's just not perfect and, the lighting and all of that. It just seems like us. And Fatma's still her daddy's girl, and Wafat still looks like she doesn't care about the rest of us. Nothing has changed there. But this is my family. This is my finite, as they call it, nuclear family. And I have 2 girls and a boy. And I introduce you to us because you might see our photos pop up over and over again throughout the presentation, and you might wonder who's this family that keeps coming up. The modern family. Let's speak about the modern family. Most of us nowadays are busier than ever. I mean, I don't even need to get data to prove that. Busier than ever with work, with school, ECAs, ASAs. Can somebody tell me the difference between them? I still don't know, but you can tell me after the presentation. Just so much, and the growing, ever-growing to-do list. Like seriously, I walk around with all sorts of different sticky notes and bullet journals to get my life together. The modern family is busy. What's happening with it is that we have just too fast, too much, too busy, too soon. This is the setting that I'm trying to build up. Is to recognize where we are. Not to evaluate it, not to criticize it, not to psychoanalyze it. This is what's happening right now. We have smaller families and lots of distractions and very busy. We're just really, really busy. So one of the things that you would notice also in our modern family that's so finite and with less children and stuff is that we have a rise of dual income households. This is really an important point. We're not here to debate whether moms should work or stay at home or whatever. We're just recognizing that there has been a shift. And this shift is recognizable, has been studied. So when they did this study was done back in the US. It might differ, of course, from country to country. Back in the 1960s, we saw that only about 25% of households were dual income households, meaning both the father and the mother worked outside of the home. Okay? When they did the same study over time, as you can see, there was an increase in the trajectory of this. In 2012, 60% of the households were dual income households. In the same time, you could see that only father employed households decreased drastically too. 70% of households in the 1960s were single income households, and that has decreased drastically to 31% in 2012. So we're setting the scene. The other data, one of these data that I was looking at really stuck with me. And I have a friend who really likes to share lots of very informative research on Facebook. I was reading about screen time and stuff. And one point really stuck with me. It was a study that was done in 2017, and it showed that 42% of children under the age of 8 own their own tablet. They have their own tablet. And I mean, while we might all say, okay, 42% of children under 8 have their own tablet, so what? I was looking at the data before that. Just 4 years before that study, they had the exact same study done, and it was 7%. So in 2013, it was 7%. In 2017, 42%. This is not this is a huge jump. And when I went back to look at the 2011 data sets, it showed that only 1%. So there is a huge increase. When you're looking at 2011, 1% of children under 8 had their own tablet to 2017, 42%. And we're going upwards with that. Of course, there are tons of other studies about the amount of screen time and what's appropriate, what's not. That's a discussion for another talk. But for this one, I'm just setting the scene. So far, what do we have in the scene? Family shrunk, family is busier, and we have that there is an increase in dual income families, right? And there is an increase in technology use with, children and okay, that's the scene. We have a scene. So then there was this study that was very recent. It was very interesting. And it was done by Oxford University. And there was a sociologist that presented her paper in at the British Sociological Association's annual conference. She basically studied quality time. There's a huge difference between quantity of when you spend time with your children, you're always there with them, and quality time, okay? So her specific research was on quality time. So she studied the amount that parents have quality time with their children, okay? She looked at the 1975 all the way to 2005, and she's still working on it, and we will find out more from 2005 onwards. And I was looking at the data, and I was quite surprised. One thing that stood up, immediately was there was an increase in how much time males spent with their children from 1975 to 25 years later. Started off at 8 hours. That's a lot. 8 minutes. 8 minutes a day of quality time with their children. And it increased. That's like barely one Rasta mouse story that my husband can get in with the children. And it increased 25 years later to 36 minutes a day. Nice increase, 36 minutes a day versus 8 minutes a day. Now for working moms in the 1975, they spent about 8 to 21 minutes a day with their children, but that increased a lot more to 56 minutes with their children. But then she had a data from working, not working, like all families, and she analyzed how many hours a week do we spend quality time with our children. Could somebody guess how many hours a week do we spend per week on quality time with our children? Throw in a number. 12 hours. 7? Well, we spend 8 hours a week in total, which is the average, I think, between the numbers you guys gave. You didn't have hope. After I told you about the 8 minutes and the 56, you were like, no hope, 7 hours, 12 hours max. So 8 hours. 8 hours is how much we spend on average quality time with our children. We spend, on average, during the weekdays, 36 minutes of quality time with our children. But the weekends is a little better. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. So there is a little bit more time. But I guess a lot of people think about that they spend a lot more time than that, because we are sometimes constantly with our children, giving them a bath, we're taking them to school, we're picking them up. So we're counting that all as time. But quality time, there isn't, that much. Why is all of this happening? This busyness of our modern world and stuff. And I'm still setting the scene. Small families, and there is more technology, more distraction, too fast, too busy, too much, too soon. This is the scene that we're living in. A lot more mothers that are working, a lot more fathers and mothers who are absent during the day. But the only way that I can relate to this, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what picture is coming up next. Well, how does this relate to the presentation? Well, there is a story that I hope you find the link as much as my mind when I process things finds the link. There was a story about an emperor, okay? So this emperor basically had a horseman guy that he really, really liked. And he told them, dear horseman, I would like to gift you some land. Basically, take your horse and go around the perimeter of the land that you would like, and I'll gift it to you. All right? So this horseman got so excited. He was like, wow, just any parameter? He was like, any parameter. Horseman gets on his horse. Ticketing. He looks out. I need more land, right? He needed more land. He kept going, whipping the horse. The horse, after a while, was like, hey, dude, I can't do that. You go do you, right? The horse, halas, finished. So he continued walking, to get to the most amount of land. He's like walking, he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he was too far from the river. Little by little, it starts setting in. He's beginning to die. The dude really wanted that big land, right? So he's crawling and stuff, and suddenly, one of his last thoughts he was thinking, he was like, I didn't need all of this land. All I needed was a small piece of land to bury my body in, okay? Let me tie this in. Why does this make sense? This is kind of like us today, right? We sometimes don't really need that much, but we're killing ourselves to get more. Bigger house, more cars, more this, more that. We need more toys. They need more toys, more books. They need more vacations, more this, more that. You're working to provide the quality of life that you would like, for the children. But sometimes you don't need that big of a land. Sometimes for your family, you need just enough land. Not to bury yourself in, but you don't need all of that. And I think this mentality of more, and this rat race and stuff created this busyness. And also, like this culture of scarcity, like there is not enough resources for everyone. Everybody's out for the grabs. That we sometimes lose sight of what is extremely important. Sometimes this is how it happens. So let's tie this in. We set the scene. I'm done with setting the scene. You have the picture in your mind already about what the modern family feels like. And I'm trying now to get you to link all of that as we go towards the importance of family tradition. How does that link? Sense of belonging. So let's set another scene. Now I know that more than half of you here are parents. I would like to know, for example, where the different places are you guys from? And that's a tricky question for some people, but where are you guys from? Can you throw in some countries? America. UK. UAE. Right? US, UK, UAE, different places. For a lot of people, this question might be very confusing. For example, in our family, if I look at it from the standpoint of my children, which might be very similar to a lot of you guys, I have an American passport. My children have American passports. They were born in the US. My husband is American. We have lots of Sudanese influence in our household because I'm originally from Sudan. My parents are very, very Sudanese. I'm looking at you, Dad. Very Sudanese still, even with the US passport. And my son was born in UAE, for example. He's never been to the US. So they've spent a great deal of their formative years in the UAE. And our nanny is from the Philippines. This is our current areas of culture that is all interacting and influencing my children's identity, okay? This is their Abu Dhabi experience, right? They have their parents' culture, which is Sudanese-American. It's a hybrid between those two. Then they have their host culture, which is the Emirati culture, which it in itself also has a lot of global experience thing going on, and other influences. At school, at my daughter's school, every year she has about 16 children from different countries that are her friends. So she interacts with, imagine, from like kindergarten until now she's in 4th grade. Every year, she has friends from lots of different countries who all, come in with their different cultures, different ideologies, different family traditions, they're interacting. So all of that, to us, is the Abu Dhabi experience. It's like a hodgepodge of all of that, and it creates this hybrid identity. Hybrid identity. So what are hybrid identities? That is basically when you have your own local identity and then a global identity, like a bicultural identity. And people are becoming more and more skillful at doing that. Basically, let's say if I am Sudanese, not basically, I am Sudanese. Hi to everyone in Sudan. If, for example, my only identity is Sudanese, and I have also, because of globalization, YouTube and social media and stuff, start building a global identity side by side to mine. Then I switch on and off between them. When I travel, I might use a different kind of identity to appeal to certain people. When I'm back home, I have another one to kind of appeal to different people. This generation, this day and age, and especially I think for my children's generation, they have more and more of that bicultural hybrid identity. They create one that they identify with as they belong to, and then they have one that is globalized to be able to connect with people from different parts of the world. So it's a global world. We travel a lot. And it's not only about going to school with different people. Nowadays, because of globalization, you get on a plane, you go to different places, especially in spring break right now. Lots of people are in all sorts of different places in the world. Those are all experiences for our children. So our children become worldly and global, right? So they're a hodgepodge of a combination of lots of different cultures. So I'm getting closer to traditions and family traditions and positive family cultures. Why are we talking about identity? Okay? While it is extremely positive and it's amazing that nowadays we are one big family, right? Or we're discovering lots of different, cultures and people and places. This is amazing. Back in the day, you can't do that. Pick up the phone, go online. So we're exposed to a lot. This is amazing. But when you have your own, when you have your children, you want them to grow up with some kind of compass, something to kind of revert back to. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what parenting style you guys use, but some kind of compass, okay? So at the teenage years, you find that children go either way, either to identity achievement or identity crisis, okay? Identity achievement is when you have a clear, definite, definable sense of self, of who you are and what you believe in and your values. Very clear. It doesn't affect it basically helps you with lots of things, from choosing your job to what you want to do and all of that. Identity achievement, clear and definite, okay? Some others, which is a lot of them, maybe it's the age, they go through identity crisis. And nowadays we see an increase in that, which is, who am I? Not clear, very hazy, very confused. It's when you get to a point where you are confused about who you are, okay? And that identity crisis is what a lot of parents, they want to minimize that. Why? We can say that it's normal, people should go through identity crisis, etc., until you see the stats. Suicide rate, substance abuse, I don't know what, lots of things come with it. And yes, you get a couple of people who don't go through that or whatever. They become resilient or become really interesting or something. But a lot of people who don't have a sense of self or compass or reach identity achievement, they get into lots of trouble. And we don't want that for our children. So how can traditions help with that? Okay. So there are different types of traditions. And the way how I would like to define traditions is this. And I thought I would have a whiteboard here, so I'm going to just imagine that I'm writing traditions. Uh, there are rituals, I'm writing it down, and there are traditions, and there are celebrations, okay? The difference between them is this. Rituals are free, like rituals and routines are frequent. They happen almost like every day, whatever. They're frequent, they're not culturally based, they are not necessarily unique, they just happen. And most families do them. Rituals and routines, some way or form, families have them. Then there are traditions. Traditions are infrequent, and in some cases are frequent, depending on how you define it. They're unique to your family, they're family-based, to build a sense of identity or a sense of connectedness to the family, to this unit that you belong to. And they help with enacting your values, they help with feeling connected, they help ground you, they help expand you. These are the family traditions. Then there is something called celebrations. Celebrations are also infrequent, but they are more based on culture, and it helps you be connected to a community or a group of people. And you could most likely do a mashup between family traditions and celebrations and create your own. I usually start most of my presentations with a story. I thought about trying something different and putting the story in the middle. So I would like to share with you a story about traditions, family traditions. And this story is about Ededa. Ededa is my grandmother. She's my mom. She's my dad's mom. And her real name is actually Maryam. But back in the day, they named people based on occasions. So her father passed away when she was 4 months when her mom was 4 months pregnant. So when she was born and they named her Maryam, they called her Al-Dayfa, which means the visitor. So she came to visit. It's as if like his soul like revisited them. But then my father couldn't pronounce her name as Al-Dayfa, so he called her Ededa. So then that became her name, Ededa. So Al-Dayfa is Ededa. So long time ago, Al-Dayfa, when I asked my dad, I was putting together this presentation and stuff, and I was like, I was gonna talk about our family traditions, but what is yours? And one of his most fond memories of Ededa, Al-Dayfa, was when he was younger, he was in boarding school. He went to boarding school since he was in 3rd grade. And 3 times a year, in the Eids, the 2 Eids, and like a school open day, parents were invited to come in to the school to meet their children. So Al-Dayfa would wake up really early in the morning and she starts preparing this elaborate meal for him. She makes legemat and kunafa, and she makes yummy meat and shaya and all of that from the day before. She's like preparing for it. And she puts it in those like huge like baskets in a thing called amud, which is, I'll show you later what it looks like. And then she goes on the train from an area called Al-Da'an all the way to where his school is, Khortaggat, which is in Al-Ubayyid right now. The train took 3 days. She's like holding on to the food and it didn't expire for 3 days until she met him. That sense of belonging, it's a simple tradition. It's only 3 times a year. But to these children, it meant a lot. And you can imagine like looking forward to this, what it meant. And looking forward to it, to the parent, what it meant. And these trains were full of parents going to see their children during that season. And all you wanted is to be called because your parent is there. So my dad would be like waiting and stuff, and they would be like, Ibrahim Bani. He would be like, oh my God, my tray is here with the lahma that's not expired. Anyways, so we'll go and meet her to get his meal. this is a tradition. It's 3 times a year. It was predictable. Even if whatever was happening in your life, it set some kind of tone. 3 times a year, my family would check in with me, and they will bring amazing things 3 times a year. So that's a very touching story, like for me, just to like kind of remember like from back in the day, like, you know, how Al-Dayfa had that family tradition that kept him grounded and felt a sense of belonging. Mind you, my dad is one of many children. Today, I literally asked him in the car, I said, how many siblings do you have? And he paused for 5 seconds. So I'm assuming they're over 25. But I'm averaging the number. But he was one of many. But that thing made him feel special. It was his quality time, because it was just him. There was no 28 other people sharing the meal with him. It was only for him, specifically for him. So these are the type of things that grounds and makes children feel connected and expands their horizon, right? But you know this tradition, and I thought about this tradition. I was like, why don't we do that anymore? And suddenly I thought about it. We still do that tradition in my household a little differently. My sister Iman calls my mom, I'm studying for, you know, my step 1s and, you know, stuff like that. My mom feels bad for her, right? She calls her. She immediately speeds to Richmond, fills up her fridge. It's kind of the same thing as what Adida did, but kind of modern day, you see? You know, like cell phone, WhatsApp, or whatever. So it still happens. Up until today, there's something about food connection and parents. It skipped a generation. So back to traditions. What I shared with you today is a tradition of, you know, from back in the 1970s and 60s of dad, and 3 times a year where he had that special connection with his parent, with his mom. And nowadays, there are several different ways of thinking about like these traditions, but in different ways. So there are daily interactions, there are weekly, there are yearly, and then there are ones that are occasionally or sometimes. So before we go into the weekly, daily, and whatever, I wanna just prove a point about how you really don't need to carve out time to increase your daily connections with your children, right? And I remember there was this study that they did in 2007, and there was this very short clip that I watched from it. So they did all of these like various videos and data and stuff. There was one that totally stuck in my mind, and it was about this mom and son. They were waiting for the car wash. She clearly looked like she just came from work. She had her suit on, and she had her checklist. She had her checklist. You know, I need to go to the car wash. I need to prepare. All of these things. So she picked up Tim from school, and they went and she put in the car to get washed, and they were standing in the sideway. And her son Tim, her name is Beth. Her son Tim had a plane that he was playing with. And at the beginning of the clip, it was a very short clip, like he goes down to the floor, he like goes down to the floor and he says, look. He just says, look. And his mom kind of goes down, you know, to his level and looks at it, and he starts driving the plane. And she's just watching him. And then she says, oh, Tim, what is that called? What is it called? And then he goes up and he goes like, it's called the Vulture. Vroom, vroom. He's like, and his mom gets up with it. Like, it's very interesting. Like, when he was down, she was down. When he got up, she got up. And she was like, oh, the Vulture. That's very interesting. And she was like, yeah, it makes sense because look at its wings and stuff. They had this interaction. It was a very interesting interaction. So he was just playing with his plane for 5 minutes until, you know, probably longer. I don't know how long a car takes to get washed. But it was like about 5 minutes. that he was playing with his plane and his mom is totally interacting with him. What's really interesting is Beth did not take time off. Like, I need to spend quality time with Tim and take him to the movies, Vox Cinema, because I need, and block off like 2 hours. She was going on, she maybe didn't have time. Sometimes we can't carve out time. But how do you find these daily interactions in what you're already doing every day? And I think that story reminded me of back when I was not working. I had more sense, I think, than now, or maybe I didn't. But anyways, back when I wasn't working, I had a little bit of a routine of pick-up and drop-offs. I think my whole life was centered on pick-up and drop-off. Pick up Fatima, drop off Fatima. Pick up Fatima, drop off. It was the whole thing. But Wafat was too young for school, so I used to take her with me to all of these different places. She was just kind of hanging around. Sometimes I'm carrying her, whatever. And this is for nourishing them. That was supposed to be after the other slide. But anyways, so Wafa basically came with me to pick up and drop off. But there was some clips when I was looking back at, 2012 and 2013 of back in the day. It reminded me of the day-to-day. I actually had more time with her that was quality compared to now. And okay, this is the clip that I basically wanted to say. You don't need lavish experiences to take them to a special spa or the Vox Cinema or stuff with them. I'm loving this presentation. I'm like, surprise, that's so cool. What is this? No, I'm just kidding. But back to this. So it's about nourishing them in the day-to-day that we had. So this is a clip of Pickup with Wafa. And I used to just pick her up. She was coming from ballet. She had a little ballet lesson.
The birds?
And
Do they hear
she was
you?
talking to birds.
What are they saying to you?
And she was very shy. I remember I used to tell people she talked and nobody believed me. I was like, I swear she
beautiful.
talked. But
I'm your friend too.
it's one of these like in every day. It's like, what are you doing? Like, who are you talking to, Wafa? And like they would tell you things during those like interactions that you would find out. Like she says, also daddy. It gave me an indication she missed her daddy. Those little things in those daily interactions, showing them that you actually care or are interested in what they're doing. You didn't have to carve out time. You're still running and picking up on whatever. And that actually helps them feel like they have, a parent that's interested in them, interested in what they're doing, etc. So yeah, so there was so back to that study that I found the clip from Tim and the airplane. It's a 2007 study. It's called Kramer-Siddiq. Their finding was everyday activities like household chores or running errands may afford families quality moments. Unplanned, unstructured instances of social interactions that serve the important relationship building functions that parents seek from quality time. So a lot of the times people feel like that's not quality time. There's a huge debate on what is quality time. It's things that are not chores and taking a bath. And some people would tell you, yes, you can find it. I think it's the way you approach it. And with the story of Tim, she could have been totally like on her phone while the car is getting washed and dropping things and being like, Tim, please don't put your plane in the floor because there's lots of germs. Like, it could have been a totally different interaction. But she had that small moment of time where she built up her quality time. So now let's go back to traditions. We defined rituals, traditions, and traditions. And now we're going to look at, we defined those already, rituals and routines versus traditions and celebrations. So what are some examples of daily family traditions? Give an example of what could be a daily family tradition. Oh, he has a mic. Yes. Let's give her the mic so she can say it very loud. Yes. So you can just say in a very loud voice, dinner. No.
Dinner.
Oh, okay. Yes. Dinner. What other things are daily family traditions? Yes?
Maybe reading stories together, doing prayers together, reading Quran together.
Yes.
Before
All of
bedtime.
these. Yes. All of these. Which in some families, these are routines, but these could be family traditions, and it's in the way how you do them, right? So as you mentioned, story time. Story time is big in many families, and it's something that some families, they're like, are you putting the kid to sleep, or am I putting, it's a really big deal. Like bedtime is a huge deal for lots of families. It's the reading the stories, connecting with them before bedtime. There is one tradition that we have in the household, which is my husband's idea. I would like to take credit for it, but it's not. My husband has incorporated worry time before bedtime with my eldest daughter, Fatima. And it's because she worries a lot. She just is by nature more worrisome. We worried about her worrying, and then one day we just decided to implement a new tradition that now we also use with Wafa. So for 15 minutes before bedtime, we asked Fatima, we're like, hi, it's worry time right now. What are you worried about? This has solved so many problems I cannot describe to you. Like, it was such an amazing time carve out that she could save all of her worries to the end of the day, because she knows she has that time, and it's either me or my husband, putting her to sleep, and she can say, I lost my planner, I'm thinking about it, then we can help her troubleshoot. It's like, don't worry about it, I'll email the teacher. Most of the time, if it was her dad, he says, I'll email the teacher, she will sleep fine. If it was me, she will wake up in the middle of the night reminding me, because she doesn't know if I will really email the teacher. But worry time is a tradition that was, incorporated a couple of years ago for my, daughter. Dinner time is such a huge deal. Dinner time, there are so many studies out there about the importance of dinner time. I cannot even describe to you. Like, there is a website called Dinner Time Movement. Why is that? So there has been lots of data collected over the years on kids who eat dinner with their families and outcomes. Okay, so they measured things like schooling, substance abuse, alcohol use, and all of that. And they found that there is something extremely, extremely special about kids that had a daily dinner time with their family, that sat in the table and prayed and ate with their family. So what are the stats? Right after dinner time, right? No, this is not what you have after dinner. This is what you prevent by having dinner, okay? So they found out, and this is from the study that I told you about in 2017, okay? They found out that 70% the kids who sat down with their family every day for dinner are 70% lower risk of substance abuse. Half as likely to try cigarettes, half as likely to be daily cigarette smokers, half as likely to try marijuana, half as likely to get drunk monthly, and 1/3 less likely to try alcohol, and they're likelier to get better grades in school, and likelier to have better friends who don't drink and use marijuana, and likelier to have parents who take responsibility, and almost 40% likelier to say future drug use will never happen. Just dinner time. That's one tradition. That's one daily tradition. And it's something that we already do. We all eat. A lot of people all have dinner. I hope everyone has dinner. Not really sure. But it's profound, the data from just having mealtime as a family not a different configuration every day. Today there's 2 individual, tomorrow is 3. Like something that they can look for and know that it always happens. Weekly traditions. What are some examples of weekly traditions? Okay, no, I'm not gonna call on you. What are some examples? What are some weekly traditions?
I feel bad because it's all about food, right?
Yes, okay, what do you eat every week?
Every Friday we go to my parents' house, so my grandparents' house, and we have a big family meal together. So that's something which we do weekly.
Yeah. That is one of the things.
Also,
Friday dinner.
Saturday morning is dedicated to homework. I don't know if that's a weekly
Oh.
tradition.
That's a lovely tradition. Did you raise your hand? You're right there. Thank you.
It's another food one. We do like weekly pizza and movie nights.
Pizza or movie nights?
And we also do, not every week, but probably a couple of times a month, go out to the desert for a barbecue, which the kids absolutely love. So, yeah.
That is lovely.
Family tradition.
Wow. Dinner and pizza night, going out to the dinner. We're still attempting to stabilize that. With the weather here, it's one of those things that it's weekly in a certain time of the year. And then, so weekly lunches. This picture was really interesting to me because it shows a family from here, and they're having a picnic, like all alone in the park. But you know that on Fridays, the reality here is that people go to their grandparents' house or their parents' house as a family. So this picture was very interesting to me. But on Fridays in general, in the UAE, you find that there is a family lunch or a family dinner. And that's something that we are definitely going to start now that my father and my mother are here. We want to start to incorporate that, to have that family time. But it could be something as simple as, let's every Friday or whenever, you find lots of families going to Al-Imarat Park, right, on Saturday. It's like a thing and the whole city is there. But those are the type of family traditions. Children will be like looking forward to it. So when they grow up, they're like, oh, I remember we used to always go to this park. Let's go and visit it and see it, And it could be Friday prayers, right? Up until like my daughter she became like 6 or 7, she used to go with her father like every day, every Friday to Friday prayers. And that's a big thing, a lot of the times for men and their sons to be going to Friday prayers together. It's a bonding experience. It's a tradition. When they grow up, they sometimes remember, wearing the jalabiya and, getting ready in the morning to go to Friday prayers. What are some examples of yearly traditions? Something that happens once a year. Eid. That's right. Birthdays. Anniversaries. Lots of celebrations. But there are vacations. Traveling. For us, it's people travel every year. They travel during spring break. That's why I think a lot of people are traveling today. They travel during spring break. They travel once a year in the summers and stuff. For us, even though we travel and sometimes not travel, there is one place we go to every single year. It's not even one country, one very particular place that since all of my kids were born, they've been going every single year. And every single year, we take our children to Rufaa, which is a city in Sudan. And we don't stay like in the city that much. We just go directly to Rufaa, and we go during the Prophet's birth time, which changes over the years because of the lunar calendar. But we now got to the point where it's getting into the school timing, and I hope the school is not watching, but we take them and do unauthorized absences. It's so important that we take them every year to this trip. It's, when they have school, it's shorter, and when they don't, it's a little bit longer. But we go every year to Rafah for them to celebrate the Mawlid. And it's really interesting, even though their lives here, the schools that they go to and their lives here is, alhamdulillah, very comfortable. When they go to Sudan, they don't complain. It's normalized because they were born seeing this. Like for Sharif and stuff, he grew up this is his first year that he was walking, and you see all of the scratches in his face because that's part of the experience. But he just is now normalized. And if you can see in this video, he looks at it, it's not familiar. He goes back to his dad and he's like, come with me. And he walks him there, and he kind of just stands there and watches as he takes in all of the voices and the sounds and the colors, and he's clapping and stuff with a parent next to him. In a couple of years, he will be like Fatma and Wafa, just like running and not needing us. But these years, he was like, this is really interesting, but come with me, like stand right next to me. But these are like something that from they're very young, that when they grow up, they might do it with their children. It might help them with their identity achievement of like having a sense of belonging to a community, to a place, to a thing. So that's an example of a yearly thing. Not just travel to the exact same place, exact same location, year after year after year after year after year. That became our family tradition. And even on times that we're like, this year let's not travel, we end up last minute buying a ticket and going because we're like, we don't want to break it. It's like, it's been happening since forever, so we didn't want to break it. So occasional, this ball, now I know why this ball is there. So this ball reminds me of, I asked my dad about what are some of the traditions that he remembers that happened on occasion. And he explains to me that whenever they used to have a visitor come and visit them there in his household, that they cook a special meal. But then that meal, they would be like eating it outside, but for the children in the house or whatever, they put like the special meal like in a bowl next to their beds. So when he would go back to his room, he would know that they had an important visitor and there is a special meal for him. Like there, it would be, of course, chicken and rice and like really amazing things. So that symbolized an occasional occurrence. When he sees that, he knows that it's been a special day and he gets to share this special meal. Other things that happen on occasion, like services, right? There are some places where you can do service like all the time, but sometimes with here, it's like, it's not consistent, right? But if you tell your children, like for example, we like to, serve. Whenever you find the opportunity, you would go. You go on walks, to support the environment. You go on, packing. You would pack some, clothes or doing bus raids. We've done all sorts of lots of different things. I wish if they were every year at the same time or in a certain season, but they kind of happen sporadically. But it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be a tradition. It still is a tradition. When we hear of it, we try our best to be there and not alone with the kids so that they can participate. So these are some things that happen on occasion. Other things that you can be doing on occasion is, for example, I know somebody mentioned birthdays. Yeah, birthdays. Everybody celebrates birthdays, but maybe in your household, for every birthday, you bake the cake with your daughter or son. That's your tradition, is that we don't buy cakes from outside, we make it, and we make it together. That could be a tradition that you guys do together. So another tradition that I think is the reason why I spoke about this subject is a couple of years ago, I had this whole, I didn't want to say identity crisis now, but I had this whole trying to understand Ramadan in the UAE. I remember, when we moved from the US, I was so excited. I was like, we're moving to a Muslim country, Ramadan's gonna be great. And I arrived here, and I expected what we do in the US times 1 million, right? So it's like, having the Advent calendar and like the balloons and the, there in the community in Northern Virginia specifically, there is this really strong Muslim-American community. And it's partially due to Virginia having one of the biggest mega mosques. It's like a huge community there. So there is a little bit more a sense of community and grouping there. But anyways, all of the moms that were young, like my age and stuff, they did all sorts of things. For Ramadan and Eid, there were like gifts wrapped under the chimney and like stuff like that. Like that was my experience of Ramadan and Eid. And looking back, it was almost like a Christmas Eid Ramadan type thing going on, but I think it's cultural thing, right? But it was all focused on Ramadan, the fanus and all of this. But then when I came here, I think Ramadan was about eating together as a family. That's the emphasis. Like there's a lot of people going to different people's houses, and a lot of it is not different people's houses, it's really your family, the huge bulk of it. 90% is like family. You go to your family's house and you eat together. That was that. So with not having family here, it was very like, hello, where's the festivities? And it was really hard. So that, from the first year, after moaning and calling up some friends, going like, can I come over to your iftar? Then I was like, how can we recreate what we had in the US here? So I started kind of coming up with some family traditions for Ramadan, which I put on my Instagram, and suddenly I had thousands of followers during Ramadan. Every year during Ramadan, something happens. But as you can see here, this was our first Ramadan tent, and this is our last year's Ramadan tent. We kind of upgraded it a little, you know, the seating area and stuff. But on the first year, we were like, we don't need to be invited to a Ramadan tent. We'll put up our own tent. And we put up literally a tent. And then we were like, okay, how do we make it very Ramadan-like? We're like, okay, fine, we're gonna make a rule that you can't have any TV or entertainment or anything in here. You can only pray or read Quran or just sit and meditate in silence. They're like, all right, that sounds great. So we started it off like this. It was empty. Over the years, of course, it got really like, it had like lettering and like a moon and a table right here with a jar and a seating and special cushions and stuff. And so we had like name placers. Every year we'd have like a different like theme or color going on. We always have like a lantern. We always have a prayer jar where they put names of all of their friends and teachers and stuff. And a calendar where every day they open an envelope. And this changed. At the beginning, when my kids were really young, I didn't have them open an envelope with a voucher. They were too young for that. I just wanted them to be excited about Eid coming. So I used to put toys in it. Like literally went to Daiso and got those 7 dirham toys and stuff and wrapped them, and it was every day they opened a toy. But I over the years, didn't want them to become very materialistic and associated with toys. So once they were able to read, I switched that into them being able to open up and unravel like experiences instead of it being toys. But also with the prayer jar, it was more about teaching them to pray for others. And from what you can see from the beginning when I was setting the scene, the modern day is more about like, it's a me society. I don't want to call it the rise of narcissism type society, but it's more me. And we want to teach our children to be more of a we. So you want them to learn how to be concerned about others, etc. And these are some of the values that we have. Of course, you will find many articles about why I don't tell my child to share anymore or care about anyone. There's tons of those. But for us, we continue to prioritize that. And let me see if there's a video after this. Okay, so basically in this video, why did I want to show this? Because pictures sometimes look really great and really nice and in the angles and stuff, but in reality, it's about the connection, right? So see, he just fell. It's chaos usually right there and stuff, but what it is that it's every night. It's consistent. Like every night we sit, they learn new words, they try to find it, you know, in the Quran, we read together. And I really wanted to show you the realness of it because a lot of the times my photos look really great, but this is how the scene looks after dinner. Like we sit and we stick the stuff in the board and stuff, and it's since he was young. So imagine Sharif like doing this for 10 years in a row. This becomes a thing for him, and it becomes like a tradition that's really important. And even like I'm seeing even like this year, there were like, with work and stuff, sometimes I'm like really too tired after, fasting a long day and stuff to do the tea and the reading and the prayer jar. And my kids will be like, are we doing the prayer jar? Even if we get invited out, it's like, when are we gonna start it's very important for them. So they just keep me going. So last but not least, positive family cultures, creating positive family cultures is going to be right after the Q&A. So, do you guys have questions? Who's gonna go for the first question? You have a question? She thinks maybe she has a question? No? All right. Has a question. تفضل.
May I ask in Arabic or in English? Both, no problem for you?
You can ask in English or Arabic. I will answer in English.
Very good, okay.
Okay.
I'll ask in Arabic.
تمام.
أنت لم تبيني أثر السياسة في كل دولة على الأسر وتربية الأبناء. بمعنى ربما في أمريكا هناك حرية مطلقة، ممكن أن أقول، في دول أخرى مثل السعودية، مثل الشرق الأوسط، لبنان، فهناك اختلافات في السياسات والقوانين الحكومية. أعتقد أنها تؤثر على في هذه الأيام على التراديشن تبع الأسر يعني أو تربيتهم يعني.
So basically what he's asking is that he said that it is possible that in places like the US and stuff, it's a free society, and there are no rules or laws that could directly interfere with your relationship or with your ideologies of how to do family traditions and how to implement them, and that there are other places where these politics and environments prevent you from doing that. My response to that would be is that family traditions are things that happen under the roof of your home, inside of your household, that nobody needs to know about. The outside environment and you create your own environment and your own laws and your own siyasat in the household, because nobody really is going to knock on the door and tell you, why are you reading a story to your child every night? The schools? Yeah. Right. So the reason why I mentioned why there are so many different people that are interacting with each other and stuff is to set the scene. The reason why you should do family traditions is to ground your children when all of this is happening outside. So when they go to school, this person has this person has that, this person has, all of these different ideologies. When you go to work, you can't, there are rules and environments. When you go to the street, but inside of your home, you can define and say, for عائلة Bani, for our family, we do things this way, and this is the way how you get your immediate children and your wife and you and your children to have something to connect with. And there are things that are not necessarily related to politics or things that are bad. It could be every Thursday you wear red socks. Every Thursday we wear red socks. So when your child becomes 24, 25 in college, and he remembers, do you remember, what's your mom and dad like? Like, oh man, they were really fun. You know what we used to do when we were young? Every Thursday we used to wear red socks. They were really great parents. You know, it's something to feel belonging to your family so that when you're raising them, there is love and connection so that raising them is even easier and parenting them is easier because they feel connected to you. But we can't control the globalization. We can't control what's coming from outside and all of that. So we can only do that. Manal?
Esraa, because I know you, and you know, you obviously know me as well. We both have younger kids, right? Our kids are, the oldest is 9 years old, and I can see where this gentleman might be coming from. I'm thinking about, you know, when our kids are 13, 14, 15, 16, and their friends are more important to them than we are, and being accepted by their peers is more important than being accepted by their parents. I can see where the challenge might be in maintaining those family traditions which maybe society finds uncool. Things like, you know, definitely I think at some point religion and being spiritual becomes uncool. And so I definitely see how at the age of 13, 14, 15, when they're teenagers, it's going to be more difficult to hang on to those traditions. And I definitely see the concern if that's what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I think we can't predict what's going to happen when they're 13,
Yeah.
14, but
It's true.
what my feedback would be is just we do the best we can. We can't
Yeah.
guarantee anything, and we just do the best we can. And starting young, starting when they're really young, and starting very, very strong, hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll turn out okay.
Inshallah.
مش كل أصابع العيد واحدة.
Yeah.
Right? Not all of the fingers on your hand are the same. We might have a child who turns out one way and another who turns out completely different.
Yeah.
And there's, what can you do?
Yes.
You do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah. That was lovely. Af. Oops.
Sorry. Sorry, I definitely second that because I've got 3 boys. I've got a 24-year-old, a 19, and Adam's our youngest, the 14. And each and every one of them, like what you've said, each and every one is different, okay? We've raised them the best we can, okay? Now, looking at my oldest, who was 24, he was a rebellious teenager. He was like, out. The arguments he had with him and his dad were horrendous. The second one was an angel. Yeah, like he's going through his adolescent years, okay? You wouldn't even know that he's growing, he's maturing into a man, okay? 14-year-old, here he comes. No, bless him. But it's what you've raised them as children, okay? If you've got that solid foundation from the beginning, like what you've been saying about your children, that quality time you spend with your children when they're young, trust me, hang in there. Hang in there. But it's the teenage years is the kicking. That's where is you know, the jittery part of life. But we do our best.
Yes,
You know, we
definitely.
do our best. And like I said, I definitely second that. You know.
I think this is a really good point, like that, you know, the difference in ages of children. A lot of what I built it on is definitely the ages of my children, which the eldest is 10 years old. Haven't been to the teenage years, so I would like to wrap up because we're to the end of this, and I am gonna wrap up with a really quick story about the creating positive family cultures. Here's a quick story. There is a crow, right? And he thought he was the happiest bird in the whole, you know, jungle until one day he saw the swan. And he said, "Oh my God, the swan is so white. It must be the happiest one out of all of us." Then the swan was like, "Really? You haven't seen the parrot. The parrot has a couple of colors going on. He's the happiest bird in the jungle." He goes to the parrot. "Parrot, are you the happiest one in the jungle?" Parrot said, "Me? Oh, because I have a couple of colors." "You haven't seen the peacock. The peacock is the happiest animal in the jungle." So he goes to the zoo, he pays money, he gets in, and he sees the peacock. Peacock, are you the happiest animal in the jungle? Happiest animal in town? The peacock said, I was just thinking about you the other day. Because I'm in this zoo and I'm not free, I think about the crow. I'm like, I wish I was the crow. He must be the happiest one out of us. Why am I saying this? Stop comparing. We, a lot of the times, with social media and all of these things, we find all sorts of perfect families, perfect traditions, perfect whatever. But the reality is not always, it doesn't sink in. So we continue to look at all of these things, benchmarks that we're trying to reach, but we can't. So comparison is the thief of joy. So stop comparing yourself to all of these different people. Have a grateful heart. Know exactly what blessings you have. Start from wherever you are. Doesn't need to be like a Paris Disney trip. It doesn't need to be anything lavish. It doesn't need to be a Kanye, Kim. I don't think they're the greatest example. Yes, it doesn't need to be any of these. Just start with where you are, with what you have, and building traditions costs nothing. You don't even need to change your time structure. Just have connections in your everyday interactions with your children. Alhamdulillah tamla al-mizan, just being grateful, it will fill your bucket. Thank you.